If I had a hammer, I'd a hammer in the morning, I'd a hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd a hammer out danger, I'd a hammer out of warning, I'd a hammer out of love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, if I had a bell, I'd a ring it in the morning, I'd a ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd a ring out danger, I'd a ring out a warning, I'd a ring out love.
Thank you. And if you are watching us on, what the heck, it's 4th of March, sorry.
5th of March.
5th of March, pardon me, Ides of March, no, 5th of March. Then you're watching us live at 8 o'clock. And our show tonight is The Green New Deal is Good for America. My name is Caleb Burns, and sitting next to me is Sherry Morisch. Please introduce yourself, Sherry.
Hi, my name is Sherry Morisch. I am the founder and owner of Krabby Coworker. I help people streamline processes, employers and employees on their tasks. And that's me.
Great. And Moses.
Hi, Moses Ross, progressive activist and occasional cohort in crime here with Caleb.
Yes, you've been here many times before, and every time was terrific. My wife says, you are just great, Moses. But, you know, last time you were here too, Moses, we were talking about this phenom, as it were, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes.
But now this very, very interesting, she's a big push now for the Green New Deal. And she's going to have meetings on it. Most of the new Democratic people vying for president are also supporters of the Green New Deal. And we're going to discuss what it is and why we need it. And there have been a lot of criticisms of it, but first let's see whether or not it's needed, I think. And
well, you know, and I think one thing I do like about the Green New Deal, and it's really easy to throw out acronyms and phrases and not understand fully what they mean, but one thing that I know about the Green New Deal is that it is for looking ahead at our future and and trying to take into account what our needs in the future are going to be. I just want to read something that you had shared with me earlier. Some of what the deal outlines is, for instance, a call for a 10-year full push-out to address issues related to climate change, including upgrading all existing buildings in the country for energy efficiency. That's audacious. Mm-hmm. Working with farmers who may pollute and pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, working with them to make it more technologically feasible.
You know, unfortunately, one of the greenhouse gases emitted by farmers and agriculture are really high. I didn't know that until recently.
Well, you know, they mock Alex AOC about the comment that she made about the flatulence of cows. And it's kind of ironic that, you know, a lot of how much methane comes from cows. Yep. She had a legitimate point that was mocked unnecessarily if you start to look at the facts. Mm-hmm. Point is with all of this is, and let me also say here, building charging stations everywhere, expanding high-speed rail, full-scale air travel stops, guaranteeing jobs with adequate family medical leave and high-quality health care for all Americans. It's kind of a catch-all phrase, but what it is it's audacious. And it's what's needed here in our country right now, especially given the fact that in the next 2 to 4 years, Democrats will be back in the majority in both the House and the Senate, and we will have the means to be able to pass audacious policies like this. Mm-hmm. And so it's good that we're having the conversation now.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. If you look at the next page, page 3, it talks about how popular, actually also page 2 at the bottom, how popular this push towards climate control is. And it turns out that right now, 30% of the people responding to a survey about maybe this stuff hurting the economy, 30% said it could hurt the economy, 63% of Americans say it's worth the cost. So 63% to 30%, twice as many people want to do something about climate change. But you don't hear that on places like Fox. You don't hear that on business news channels and so on too. But you know, Americans really want to do something about the economy, the climate change. That's really, really exciting that the House is going to hold hearings on that. But I don't know if people have looked at the papers and so on online. Trump is putting together a panel that's opposed to climate change, that is bringing in a bunch of greedy malcontents who are just going to say, oh, nothing to worry about, nothing to worry about. I find that
it's so amazing that the amount of denial that is being propagated, that is being promoted by those that have a financial interest in the current situation, you know, like oil companies and people that chemical companies and such like that, that want to maintain the status quo. As I say, I really have begun to change my views when it comes to this type of audacious policy. At first, I thought it was kind of pie in the sky kind of a perspective, you know, of a hope, you know, being slightly cynical in the political realities to get it passed. But I'm beginning to change. I really think that we're at the precipice of a real progressive moment in history over the next 2 to 4 years, and it takes audacious policies like Green New Deal to give us something to shoot for, to give us something to aspire towards.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the moonshot of our generation, perhaps.
It has been said, and one of the things that AOC also says is that, you know, this is like World War II, and that you have a huge commitment for the thing. This is a transformative idea, and if we don't transform the trajectory we're on, we're not going to survive long as a species. I mean, we are facing just destruction on a huge, huge scale. You know, we've been taught that we had 5 previous extinctions, major extinctions. One of these were dinosaurs, and we thought, oh, you know, these were all due to meteorites, really. Dinosaurs, that particular one, about 230 million years ago, was caused by meteors. The others were caused by atmospherics, by CO2, which were releasing at that point methane gas. And so 4 out of 5 of the great extinctions were due to atmospheric change. And we are headed that way now, too. A lot of problems with methane being freed up from the ocean, from the warming up and so on, too, and released into the air. Very, very bad things ahead.
Well, it's not like they have not had warnings of this impending environmental disaster.
Yes.
I mean, you know, most recently I was reading about this big, huge chunk of the ice shelf in Antarctica that is cracking off, that will be, you know, that equates to about like 1/5 of the total ice pack down there. So, you know, we're getting to that point of no return. I mean, you know, when Al Gore started talking about inconvenient truths back, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, he was poo-pooed, and we were easily able to discredit him or to make fun of him, mock him as someone thinking too far ahead. Well, everything that he has said is turned out to be correct.
Except that he was not as pessimistic as he should have been. That is, the markers are flying by us at a hell of a rate. One of the books that recently came out is by David Wallace Wells. I just bought it myself. The Uninhabitable Earth and Life After Warming. It's a terrific book. If you get a chance, subscribe to it or listen to him on YouTube too. Anyway, David, he says there are several different things about the climate change that we really should be aware of. Number one, things are happening incredibly quickly. The tipping points are coming so quickly. And, you know, absolutely. And, you know, if you think, oh, it's in the future, no, that's what they thought. But no, it's within a couple decades. If we don't get our act together, we're in big trouble.
Well, it's past the point of avoiding it. It's to the point of mitigating it now.
Yeah.
And it's past prevention. And so, you know, it's just a matter of whether or not we take it as serious as a society as we need to. And it goes as simple as fundamental changes in how we approach garbage, you know, and how we do basic things like recycling. And, you know, I was hearing that in Washington State, they're mandating, there's a law that's being considered by the state legislature to mandate that car dealers sell a percentage of their inventory be electric cars. And so by a certain date, you know, 30% of what they sell has to be electric. And, you know, and there obviously there's this automotive interests are against this, but I start to think, you know, it does take that kind of a policy extreme.
Yes. That's one of the points
Now-
made by David Wallace
Yeah.
Wells, too. He says individual kinds of things, for instance, being more careful what you drive and doing composting and so on, maybe not flying on planes as often to reduce the carbon footprint. He says those things are okay and they're laudable. But he says, no, only if you get a whole group of people together, you have political pressure, you have countrywide pressure, do you make the changes. And one of the points he made, too, was we went to World War II, we had a total commitment to the effort, and it took all of us. And right now, we have, with all due respect, we have Fox News, we have the Republican people just, you know, I don't know, I was watching The View yesterday, an excerpt on The View, and Meghan McCain was laying on Jay Inslee, saying, you know, you don't know what you're doing and all this sort of stuff. People are going to pay $600,000, a family can't do that. And you know, Governor Inslee just said, no, that's wrong, that's not true. That's right. I would have been so angry, but I mean, just lie after lie after lie. And even after he corrected her, she continued to lie.
Well, you know what, I didn't catch all of that interview. I did catch parts, his rebuttal to her. And one thing I really am liking about Jay Inslee and him declaring his run for the presidency is that his whole platform is climate change focused.
Yep.
Now, if he could, and of course we have to have that conversation. One thing I like about Elizabeth Warren is that she has eschewed all forms of PAC and large donors contributing to his campaign. She has made it a point to say that she's not going to take any of those large donations, and she's only going to accept small donations. And what I find is interesting is that because it is the presidential cycle here now, and because of the fact that we have all of these presidential candidates with their issues of the moment or their issues of their focus, we actually might start to have a good conversation on these issues when it comes to campaign finance reform, when it comes to the Green New Deal, because these political, these candidates are going to start talking about it, and that's the basis of their platform. Jay Inslee is 100% behind it.
You know, I absolutely, and well, Bernie Sanders is for that too, but one thing I think that Bernie Sanders has been focusing on too is issues, issues, issues. Don't tell me about your personality. You know, I'm not interested in emails or this other stuff. Tell me what you're interested in. And I mean, I love the focus. And now, as you say, now this is a presidential year. Even the billionaire Koch brothers, you know, I think they spent something like $800 million in the last election cycle, and they're going to spend a lot more this time. But as Bernie says, hey, if you have enough believers, you know, numbers of people will overcome money and so on too. Well,
and another thing about the political environment right now, the presidential political environment, is I remember this very clearly. When you have a contested primary in one of the major parties like this, it by nature will stimulate conversation on issues, because you're trying to, as they say, you win, you go to the left, or you go to the left in the primary, and you go to the center for your general, or go to the right in the primary and you come to the center in the general.
Right in the primary in the Republican.
If you're a Republican, right. And the point being is that the far left right now is talking about the Green New Deal. The far left right now is talking about campaign finance reform. The far left right now is talking about income inequality and racial inequality.
AOC.
So that's what's going to be discussed over the next year on the presidential trail. Kamala Harris has been bringing it up. Cory Booker's been bringing it up. Man, we've got a great field to be working with.
I love the idea. Remember when AOC had her platform put up on Hannity had stolen it, you know, and said, this is what she's for, raising taxes, you know, to 70% on people over $10 million, you know, for health care, and raising minimum wage to $15. And Hannity says, yes, look at all those things she's for. And it turned out that they were very popular with the viewers watching that show. And then Hannity took it down pretty quickly. But AOC has a lot on the ball with that. I mean,
it's funny, you know, all these negatives that they have against her are actually positives for her base.
Yes.
You know, and they're already talking about, they're making it, it's gone beyond policy differences when it comes to dealing with AOC now. They're trying to make it really personal, and it's just disgusting, quite frankly. I mean, you know, I saw something on Twitter today that they were attacking her mother. Her mother? Her mother on something. I mean, it's like the old lawyers, the old lawyer adage: if you can't win your case on facts,
attack the law or something.
Get all angry and huffy and puffy about it.
Personal attacks.
Yeah,
If you have not enough evidence or facts on your side to justify your argument, they tend to make personal attacks when they can't justify their argument. So
The master of that now,
you
of course,
see that
is
all the time.
President Trump is good at that, deflecting and personal attacks.
In projection,
Projection,
accusing others of what
you're doing
he's
yourself,
guilty
absolutely.
of. Right.
And yeah, he's doing that now. Very interesting what's going on with him nationally too, with the House being so active and so on.
Well, you know what? When it comes to Trump, just a quick aside about Trump. Once again on Twitter, I saw something about a poll showing that his approval rating, President Trump's approval rating, is over 50%. I cannot believe that. That poll.
Which poll was that? Rasmussen?
Who knows? But there's got to. That just doesn't sound.
No,
right.
The New York Times poll was 46%.
Yeah.
And that was Monday.
I was looking at 538. You know, this is Nate Silver's thing today, and he's 12 points down. So no, it's not. He's not half. He's.
I took it with a real grain of salt as an anomaly or an outlier, you know. But point is that there's always going to be a certain percentage of people that are going to agree with President Trump no matter what he does. And you know, the discussion has been, okay, do we appeal to those Democrats? Do we appeal to those people to try to win them over, or do we just let them be and work with try to win over the independents? And it was interesting. I was reading about how Beto went about it down in Texas. He said, forget them all. I'm going to go get new voters, people that have never voted before. I mean, that's who I'm going to target. And he didn't matter their party affiliation. It just mattered whether or not they had ever voted.
And he didn't actually even mention Trump, as I understand in the reporting that I heard. He didn't even mention Trump. He focused on the issues that his audience are concerned with at that moment.
Texas also has incredibly high voter suppression laws and so on too. And you know,
do they?
Oh yes, one of the worst states in the country for that.
Well,
and if they had,
well, we've heard of Georgia, we've heard of North Carolina and Florida, you know, and Alabama. I hadn't heard of Texas being laden with voter suppression, except for Cruz. Ted Cruz has had his pieces in that.
Oh yeah, no, it's a lot of that stuff. And yeah, I like Stacey Abrams. What a terrific speaker.
Oh, she's fabulous.
She's great. And I'm glad she got a chance to speak back to Trump and his State of the Union sort of thing.
Well, it's interesting, you know, everybody was always saying there that back in 2016 and prior, that the Democratic Party didn't really have a bench, a deep bench. And now we have such a deep bench. We have this wealth of riches, you know, an embarrassment of riches when it comes to these candidates. It strikes me, it reminds me of 2003, 2004, when you had a contested Democratic primary, when you had people like Howard Dean and Dick Gephardt, and you had John Kerry ended up coming out of that mix. And I think Edwards was in that mix back then as well.
Yes, he was,
And some great discussions. I mean, some great policy discussions. But then, remember, unfortunately, you know, the swift boating, you know, and Kerry goes up at the convention and reporting for duty, you know, thinking that the soldier approach would be the way to go, and they just tore him a new one with the swift boaters.
A thing that Kerry, a mistake he made was, he thought, I think he said later on too, I didn't think people would buy the swift boat ads.
Right.
It's like, these are the same people that did Willie Horton. You know.
Okay, so, and I'm going to interject here just real quick. We need to convince our voters, our base, well, actually, no, we need to convince the right that socialism is an economic policy. It's not a form of government. I was doing opposition research, and some people on Fox were trying to establish what their parroting audience states, that socialism is a government form in Venezuela and Cuba and so on. It's not. It's a social economic policy. It is not a form of government. It is a political theory. That doesn't mean it's communist. That doesn't mean it's a socialist government. We need to establish this as part of the Green New Deal.
Most kids, I think, under the age of 30, would rather go with socialism than capitalism. Right. I mean, that's it's
in many cases.
No, but what socialism for them means minimum wage, assistance in college and so on.
Yes.
It means other things, the health care and so on, the things that we expect that every other country on the face of the earth, advanced country has.
That we used to have.
Yeah, that has, but we used to have that too. And until Reagan devastated educational programs in California, college in California was
and then
almost
the rest
free.
Of the nation
caught on because of the Republican greed has despoiled the country, and the media does not call it out because they're controlled by billionaires themselves who make money, so therefore they don't want to talk about raising taxes.
But then there's people like us who went to school when taxes on the higher level income earners in this nation were at 70 and 80%. We had to worry about pencils, notebook, and paper to go to school. The school had everything else.
You know, I remember back, I graduated.
Were happy.
I graduated from high school in 1983, and
the old guy.
I know. Tell me about it. And what's interesting is that going to college back then was much more realistic and affordable. I think back now, what my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, is going to be facing when it comes to her annual tuition costs at U of O or wherever.
Correct.
It's going to be, even at PCC, it's getting expensive. Even at community colleges, they just had to raise the rates at community colleges per credit.
I'm 200 grand into my education.
And
And I only have two degrees and a professional certification, right?
That's amazing.
So it's not cheap. And
No.
it's even working full time and raising kids and going to school.
Right.
You get no breaks in this nation.
Well, I think we have what we used to take for granted, this opportunity to get a secondary education, is now, quite frankly, not even on the radar for many kids, much of our youth, because they know that how difficult it's going to be able to go to school and survive and find a place to live and to have a job. You can't. It's almost all or nothing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, and I blame Republican greed, and I blame the idea that they just want to entitle themselves at all costs. That's why bankers charge so much money for bank loans for school and so on. Why Joe Biden, bless his soul, also helped put through a bill that said that bankruptcies by students cannot be discharged, debt by students cannot be discharged by debt, which means that if you go bankrupt, if your house goes bust, you can declare bankruptcy, business bankruptcy. If you were a student, no. You cannot, I mean, that is just unconscionable.
Well, it's so counterproductive as well. I mean, it's handcuffing our future.
Absolutely.
Basically.
I've seen some of the statistics on that too, and certainly the families aren't there, the houses aren't being sold and so on too, but opportunity cost, that is really hamstringing so many kids.
Right.
And it's
an unfortunate thing too, because you start to think about it over the longer term, you know, over the last 20 years and the disadvantages that it has given our youth and a whole generation of Americans to kind of stifle their growth. And
well, there's a plan for that, right?
Well, correct, and it's a part of a larger overall plan to make more worker bees accept their economic situation the way and to not complain.
Yes.
I think I have a little bit more of a perverted view of it. I believe it's actually the Republican Party mostly. It can be on both sides, but mostly the Republican Party initiating a level of lower educated voters and fewer expectations. If you have highly educated individuals in your communities, they are going to vote for their communities, investment in their communities. Right. If you don't, as you were saying, if you have less educated, low-wage earners, all they're looking at is their survival, and I've been there.
That's right.
Your survival is number one.
When you're worried about putting food on the table, you're not going to be worried about your long-term debt.
Exactly.
Related to that too,
What about your community?
Wow.
The more you invest in your community, the more you receive for yourself.
Jack Welch, who was the head of GE, and he was the one who talked them into exporting a lot of the telephone jobs over to India. He says, oh, here they speak English.
Oh, is
in
that
India,
who
right?
did it?
That was Jack Welch. His idea of a perfect workforce was a large barge full of workers anchored off the continent somewhere, you know, the east or west coast. That is not my idea of a community. That doesn't build schools, libraries, communities, you know, places where you want to send your kids.
A Green New Deal?
Yeah, well, a Green New Deal can do that.
Yes.
Minimum wage and so on, too.
But that doesn't build this.
Oh, no. But, you know, but Jack Welch is just, no, the race to the bottom. Just, and, you know, also billionaires and so on, too. They go from country to country. They have no loyalty to any particular country, so many of them. You know, they're not bothered. I agree with... Also, one of the things that Bernie said, too, you know, if we raise 70% of the taxes above $10 million a year to 70%, which was less than it had been in the past, he said, you know, they're not going to mind it. They're not going to buy one less plane or have, you know, one less pair of shoes. It doesn't make any difference to them. There's what they call a utility factor. For them, it's negligible in cost.
Well, it's negligible, yes, and it's also a cost of doing business that has already been taken into account many years ago. I mean, you know, back in the 50s and the 60s, when we did have the economic growth that took us to the moon, you know, we did have a 70% tax rate for income. And so, you know, we've seen it. Good old Ronald Reagan, of course, he lowered it down to 35, and with all these other new cost-cutting measures. Point is that, you know, by having this discussion now, be it stimulated by Bernie or be it by AOC with the Green New Deal, it's kind of instilling this new standard. It's instilling this new level of expectation with voters and with the public about what we can do again. You know, it's inspiring. It's inspiring people again. And we have not been inspired of late.
I agree. I absolutely agree. The last election, too, with Trump, I mean, just scaring the bejesus out of his voters and so on, too. Crooked Hillary, lock. And now he's still saying, you know, lock her up and so on, too. But, I mean, yeah, it's just fear from these guys. Right. And there's no shining light, you know, we're going to make it a better place and so on, too, at least not from him.
Well, and see, what's funny, too, is that you can only go with that trope for so long before people get inured to it, before people get immune to it, you know. And so you can, oh, look at the boogeyman over there. No, it's over here. You know, it's behind this wall. It's over here, you know. And it's been effective. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's been very effective for Trump. But I think people are finally realizing that the wolf in sheep's clothing, you know, is just that.
I
Sane people.
think so. I think...
At least within the general public. I mean, people are...
No,
yes, but...
Well, 46% still follow him.
But you have Fox, and within the bubble, there's people turn it on in the morning, turn it off at night, and that's what they watch all day long, and they believe the lies that come down. You remember in the Iraq War and so on, too, it turned out that the Fox viewers believed 3 lies, and this elected Bush in 2004. They believed that Saddam Hussein had something to do with 9/11. They believed that weapons of mass destruction had been found in the country of Iraq. What else? The other one was another one, very, very common lie. I can't remember the third one now. Republican voters believed it all because it was said over and over and over again on Fox. Right. The rest of the people didn't. And, you know, Bush just won a squeaker over Kerry. Right. And even Swift aside. I'll think of the third one anyway.
Well, you know, but what's interesting, though, is that because of the scrutiny, this heightened scrutiny of Trump, because of the fact that we took over the House and we finally have a level of power to help, to investigate all of this, you know, you're finding out that this is all going to come to light. This is all going to be aired. And you're finding out the illegitimacy of many of these media outlets, like the National Enquirer, of who, you know, I saw this one graphic which just pissed me off to no end, of like 40 of their covers that came out in 2016 that were slamming the Clintons, you know, and you take that into account. You take into account the Russian involvement in the use of propaganda.
Comey's releasing the goddamn letter. Right?
Well, but that's part of it. That's absolutely part of it. But I think that to this day, I claim that Hillary Clinton was should have been our president.
Absolutely.
And the only reason that she lost is because of the collusion of Trump with the Russians and the amazing propaganda that they spread to gullible and naive lefties and righties on Facebook.
There was a reason.
You know, we have to both groups have to accept the responsibility of that they were taken advantage of, and that their opinions of Hillary were skewed because of that.
Let me tell people who we are, by the way. We are Progressive Radio and TV. We're here the first Tuesday of the month from 8 to 9 p.m. And our show tonight is The Green New Deal is Good for America. And we were raving about AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she's terrific. And we're also talking about how important energy is, how there are groups of people who are opposed to telling us the truth about energy, and how the climate change can and will devastate the planet if we're not careful. Now, you may think, oh, no, you know, Trump says it's not so. It is so. And 97% and more of all climate scientists who have published believe that this is the case. There is no room for doubt. And anyone who says no, that we don't have to worry about climate change, is selling you something. And among other things, they're selling you down the river. And your children, families are up the creek. A lot of kids, for instance, refuse now to have children of their own.
Yep.
Pretty big thing. Yep. And because they believe that it's unfair to bring kids into this world now.
Yep.
So,
Well, you know, just looking at some grasping at a straw of hope here, I like to think that the generations, what has come, there's X, that's what I'm in. I'm Generation X. There's the millennials, which and then there's the Generation Y, and that's like the 18 to the 25-year-olds. Oh. And I think that's what it is, right?
Okay.
Yep. My point is that the Y generation and the millennial generations, I think, are going to be our saviors here. They've seen the cynicism. They've seen the propaganda, and they can see through it.
I hope so. I'm not sure.
I'm feeling
more and more they can.
Positive about it. At least personally, I think that they're recognizing that Fox is a propaganda machine, and so they're not taking it at the word of that, for instance, their grandmothers or their parents might have been doing. You know, I think there's more skepticism.
There was, both of you know I'm pretty deep into social media and a lot of the tech stuff, right? And I saw a commercial on YouTube the other day, I believe it was YouTube, and it was the young conservatives talking about all of the past 50-year talking points, like they're today. And they're spewing this propaganda on, I almost complained to YouTube, why is this even allowed?
Yeah, they've also, YouTube has been taking down the anti-vax stuff because it's, you know, deadly and harmful.
Yeah.
I don't think you can quite do that for this, but it really is irritating too. How about, remember Ivanka started lecturing AOC? AOC said, you know, we should have $15 jobs, we should, the government should be the employer of last resort. And Ivanka says, well, I think most people just want to work for what they can get. And AOC says, oh, that's good from a trust baby. You know, your grandparents had a lot of money, your parents have a heck of a lot of money, and you've been living on a trust with a trust estate as well. So it's like she knows nothing about working.
Now I have a question.
Sure.
If I had AOC standing in front of me after I gave her a hug, I'd say,
you could dance with her too.
In your final rendition of the Green New Deal online, it states that we would be 100% emissions free by 2050.
Hopefully.
You are telling and 30 to 40% by 2030. Okay, you're telling your interns and your employees and your staff members that we need to be 100% in the next 10 years. Are you overestimating your ability and Congress's ability to pass these measures and have America's confidence in your abilities to do so?
I don't think she's going for zero emissions within 10 years, but she wants to start the...
That's what she's been saying.
I think
of
she's going to start the change within
Well,
10
even
years.
within 10 years, you know, it's kind of interesting. Like here in the state of Oregon, they've adopted, like by 2030, that they're going to be at, you know, 100% emission-free or 80% at, you know, they're going to hitting these goals, very audacious goals, right? And so it's not unfeasible what she's saying at 0% with by 2030. It's not unfeasible at all. Is it? I like to. It's difficult. Yeah, absolutely. It's very difficult. Is it going to require a change of a complete change of public mindset in business mindset? Yeah, it would. But is it necessary? Very much so.
Very much so.
But I'd venture to say that it's like in any kind of a negotiation. You know, you've got to start up here, and then kind of come down. It's probably the only way that she can, you know, it's
plant her
probably
flag and walk on. From
exactly, exactly. That's how Bernie did so well, because he planted his flag on that far left side and said, "Okay, these are the things I want to talk about."
These are the topics. These are the issues that matter to all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
So what
Can't
about
blame, you know,
infrastructure to rural areas, transportation? Because like I live in a rural area and I have to drive everywhere for my job, for networking, to come here, whatever. If I lived in Oregon City or Portland, I could just stop driving my car and ride the bus or walk or get a bike. How are we going to manage the rural areas and building infrastructure to make it easier for us to come into town?
Well, she wants a lot more mass transportation, for one thing, buses and so on too. And in a lot of Oregon, for instance, buses don't run on Sundays.
Right.
You know,
Right,
you go, "What
in
is
many
that?"
areas.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Or it's very limited service. You know, I was reading a really great article about how high-speed rail can actually help a local economy by what it does is that by being able to quickly, it establishes new suburban areas that have lower housing costs that still allow, because of the high speed, to be able to live in those rural areas, but yet be able to commute to jobs in the urban areas. And so they can quickly go further. They can go further out faster. So it would be like the equivalent of living in, Tualatin, or let's say Salem, and going to work in Portland, but you're taking a high-speed train that gets you there in 30 minutes versus driving, which takes
for an
hour. I mean, my perspectives are off, but the point is,
that's a great idea. So how do we get, in our lifetime, are we going to envision that from today, where there's almost nothing, to...
In my lifetime, I'll be happy if we see we see Max lines down at Bridgeport Village that will take us to downtown Portland.
When Max first came
knock
out,
on wood, that's supposed to be in the next 10 years.
You were in college and I was in high school when Max first came out. They never envisioned it going anywhere but Gresham to downtown. And a lot of us were talking at the time, wow, wouldn't it be cool if it went to Clackamas and out to West Portland and stuff like that, and boom, here we are.
Well, and you got to...
And only 20 years.
That was partly because of the vision of people like Sam Adams and Eric Sten, a lot of these Portland City councilmen, council people that had the vision of a tri-county system of transit that would be low, of light rail.
Yes.
They knew that there was a Clackamas opportunity. They knew that there was the Red Line opportunity out on the northeast and then southwest, going along Barber Boulevard. They had to look at it from a long-term perspective, though. Right. And it's so easy in the short term for the people that are being affected by it to complain about it or to worry about it. And so I have a lot of respect for politicians that are having to look at it from this 10,000-foot, 10-year level. Future. Right. How is this going to impact our community in the future?
Now, there are several things that are different now because the greedy interests have learned how to get a lot of people agitated, right? The carpets groups, just make up crowds of people who show up and protest, sometimes for money, right? Some of Trump's supporters were paid to be there at the time. But yeah, I mean, you have the Koch brothers and a bunch of other people too who are just absolutely opposed to any type of mass transit. Remember the cable cars, pardon me, down in Los Angeles. At one point, they were very popular down there, the electrical driven ones. And the tracks were paid by, were bought by rubber companies that were torn up. And then people didn't have those cars anymore, the electric trolleys to go. And they had to go to cars. The greed of these guys is incredible.
I'd heard that story. That's an amazing story, too.
Hey, you know, I just want to say, if any viewers out there are interested in giving us a call and letting us know what your thoughts are about the energy crisis ahead, about climate change and how it's going to devastate the planet, and would you put off having kids if you're worried about this? But anyway, give us a call at 503-650-0198. That's 503-650-0198. And let me just say where we are. We are here at Willamette Media Center, and I think that the title will be up there and how you can get in contact with us. It's a terrific place, and if you have an idea for a show, there we are, Willamette Falls Community Media Center, 1101 Jackson Street, Oregon City. And yeah, just give them a call, 503-650-0275, 503-650-0275, and come in here and sign up for a course, and
Sign up for the newsletter.
Sign up for the newsletter.
We have a newsletter.
You do have a newsletter.
We do.
Good.
We have an awesome newsletter.
Great. Also.
We have an Artist of the Month, and I'm starting to put, bad plug here.
No.
I'm starting to put in shows and classes and
good.
everything, so get the newsletter.
Oh, good for you. I think it's just great. No. You've been on a lot of shows, haven't you?
I have over the years. It has. I thoroughly enjoy doing this. It's.
You're knowledgeable.
I just have fun doing this. I mean, it's like we were talking about before earlier tonight. We were talking about Toastmasters.
Yes.
Yeah. If you were watching this channel earlier, you were watching the Toastmasters show, and Toastmasters is. And that was something that I used to enjoy doing. I haven't done it in many years, but I know that you were involved with it, and I know that you are definitely involved with it, Caleb. And just as a way to be able to get out there and talk to people and be able to share my opinion with folks. But this is a call-in show,
yes.
So we do want to encourage you to call in. I'm curious, if anybody out there would like to share with us what they do individually to try to promote this kind of a Green New Deal, or at least the attitude of the Green New Deal. I mean, did you go out and buy an electric car? Are you recycling more? I mean, what else?
Are you going to vote for candidates based on whether or not they're going to do something about climate change?
Or are you opposed to all of this and think we're all crazy kooks and call us and tell us?
Yeah, not if you watch Fox television all the time.
You know, I watched Fox. I used to be a devoted Fox News watcher until my mid-20s, I think. About my mid-20s.
Okay.
And then I started reaching out and looking at other forms of broadcasting school did that to me. They taught me how to go and look at other news sources and how to evaluate whether things were true or not. And oh my goodness, all the things that I was missing by watching Fox. There was just too many
the lies you were learning.
Things that are, well, it's not even lies. They just completely run over stories that are really important, one, to the country, and two, to your community.
Don't they also magnify stories that don't make a difference?
Yeah,
focus on stuff. Look over here. Don't look at the major issues of the day.
Or suppress stories that aren't going to be favorable.
Tell us that story. Tell us what did they suppress recently?
Oh, they recently suppressed the Stormy Daniels case. You know what they did? Also, Roger Ailes fed Trump the questions at the first debate.
I heard about that today.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all. That doesn't surprise me. You know, we're learning more and more about the insidiousness of the Trump campaign within the major media, with the Inquirer and with Fox News and with the GM and the Russians and the RNC. I mean, it's just. Thank God we're doing these investigations. I was reading that they have 81 separate investigations that Elijah Cummings and the House Oversight Committee is going to be expanding upon over the next few months.
Yes.
81 separate issues.
At first, Trump was saying, this is good. But the day later, after that, you know, it's a Democratic witch hunt. That's what they're doing here.
Oh, that's crazy. Considering the amount of apathy and the obstruction that the Republicans did over when they had the House. you know, to the
11 hours of Hillary Clinton, you know, Trey Gowdy's asking these
Oh,
questions
my
about
goodness.
Benghazi and so on, too, emails. And, you know, the audacity of them to say, oh, we shouldn't investigate Trump. You know, just pass it along, don't look at it. Hey, let me ask you a question, okay? This is a, who came up with the term Green New Deal? Do you know who thought of that?
Oh, I did know that. I did hear about this. Thomas Friedman, the
Good
writer
Fried-
for New York
That's
Times.
right.
That was, yep.
But
I
now,
do remember
the
that.
Green New Deal that he
I just heard about that.
proposed was not necessarily the one that AOC is proposing. But when he proposed it, he was kind of using it as a catchphrase to express these new populist ideas that need to be promoted. And he was kind of, Thomas Friedman's that kind of a writer. He will generalize and give little nifty phrases to describe his concepts. And so that's where he came up with the concept.
You are right, sir.
And then the idea that AOC, she adopted it, not in the literal sense, but in the phraseology, and he's fine with that. You know, as long as the concept of this Green New Deal is continued.
You know, another person
he wasn't real big with the
another person who
specifics.
did it recently was Jill Stein in 2016. She had it laid out quite a bit. I did not like Jill Stein. She was a spoiler in that sort of a thing, but that was part of her platform too. But yeah, it was Tom Friedman 12 years ago.
I used to really enjoy Tom Friedman.
I don't.
Not as much anymore. I've noticed he's kind of sold out a little bit.
Yeah,
But
no, I
but
agree.
back in the day, he was quite revolutionary. During the Bush administration, he was one of the few writers for the New York Times that was not in lockstep with the Bush administration. He would call them out on things.
Yeah, well, he's a Republican. His wife is a billionaire, so you know, it's a tough life if you can do
I
it.
listened to Air America during the Bush administration.
I survived on Air America. KPOJ in
Right.
Portland
There you
was
go.
Tom Hartman.
Tom
yeah,
Hartman
yeah,
back
Tom
in the
Hartman.
day.
Up in Seattle.
Tom Hartman, I had the chance to meet him when he lived here in Portland.
He's back.
That's what I understand. Yes,
Yep.
he is back.
Still back.
Yes, Jefferson, my friend Jefferson Smith subs in for him occasionally on the radio show on their
Impressive
daily
guy,
show.
Jefferson. Impressive guy.
Smart guy, amazingly smart guy. He had some political challenges.
That's fine.
But that's
That's okay. We don't have.
we don't have time to go into all those
No.
details. But a
No,
very
smart guy.
man.
Smart
Very
as a
smart
whip.
man.
Knowledgeable.
So how are we going to pay for education to fill all the awesome new jobs?
One of the things that AOC says, and so on too, is raising 70%, you know, increasing the top marginal tax rate to 70%. And, you know, the Republicans just pretend, oh, that means that 70% of all income is going to be taxed at 70%.
No.
They are liars. They are liars.
They were talking about that on PBS today, too.
The being, I mean, that, you mean the lie?
Yeah.
That's what they say. Yeah, but among other things too, a stat tax, and a stat tax is a stock transaction tax. So maybe 10 cents every time $100 of stock is sold, then 10 cents goes into a fund, and that will generate incredible amounts of money.
And you know, after that, it's not like it's not an attainable or a manageable level. I mean, we're talking about a tax rate after the first $10 million is earned. $10 million is a lot of money to untaxed.
Yes.
And so if you're in that kind of an income bracket where you're making that much money.
How much would it hurt you?
It's not going to hurt you at all.
Right.
I mean, realistically. And so, you know, all this reticence from the Republicans is just basically them being the mouthpieces for the big businesses that are going to be taxed on at these levels. And, you know, so you can take their whining with a grain of salt.
Bernie
when it
Sanders
comes to
also
this.
talks about increasing the taxes on estates, right? And, you know, right now he says, you know, we should tax them at 70%, the large estates. And frankly, the billionaires, and I agree with Ocasio-Cortez on this, one of her campaign guys says, every billionaire is a failure. And what that means is, you know, other people have said this too, very, very knowledgeable people have said, you only get $1 billion these days if you do things that are unfair, or if you make money in other people's money, like hedge fund managers, or if you work on a monopoly, you know, like Amazon.com, Facebook, I mean, they work on monopolies. And, you know, in the old days, when you had trust busting, and they would look at these large amalgamations of power and they say, that is too much, that controls too much of the market, and they break them up. But now these companies pay monies to invest, pardon me, to consultants to pass laws and so on too to protect them. But yeah, there are a variety of other ways too. But those are the major methods. And you know, really, if we have people getting $15 an hour minimum wage jobs, and that will circulate a lot more money through the economy, and then you'll have what they call aggregate demand. Aggregate demand means people are going to buy stuff, and so put other people to work too. But you know, if this should only, hopefully, it really helps if people at the lower levels spend the money. If people with higher levels, if they get it, they put it in their Swiss bank accounts or other stuff, and they don't spend the money.
Well, that's the whole basis of the rising tides lifting all boats kind of a concept. And but the problem is that if your boat's got a hole in it in the first place, you're not going to be rising.
Right.
You know, and that's the disadvantage that the lower income bracket folk have when it comes to that concept. So what you're saying is...
Yeah, but the Republicans, like Ivanka, is saying, "Oh no, we just want a job, and you know whatever they give us, you know, we'll take." No, you're a lying person.
That's just being disingenuous.
No, that's lying. That's lying. You say disingenuous. Oh, that's a nice word.
Well, and you know, and right there is the crux of the issue when it comes to confronting the Trumps and the Republicans. Is you can do it like I did it just now and say, oh, that's disingenuous, which is just another way of saying, a polite way of saying what he said, that they're lying.
Yes.
You know, so I kind of have to go with where you're coming from, Caleb. I mean, you know, you have to call something out. You have to call these inequities out. You have to call this evil out. And right now we're at the cusp of the next 2 to 4 years where we have this forum to call it out.
Exciting times.
It's a very exciting times to be a progressive.
Yeah.
You know, because you can see the things change, the horizon. You know, the change on the horizon. You know, with the minorities, with the Republican minorities becoming smaller and smaller and less influential and dying off.
And louder.
And louder.
And more willing to break the law, for instance, in suppression of the votes. How about this North Carolina fiasco, right?
Right.
Yeah, there was election fraud, and it wasn't Democrats, right? It was Republicans. What a surprise. And, you know, Democrats want to expand the vote as much as they can, get everyone to vote. Republicans say, oh, that'd be unfair. That'd cost us our power. I mean, that's what sort of Mitch
McConnell was writing that way for a little bit.
Absolutely, he was.
Hopefully he got nailed back. So anyway.
And that's where I come from my optimism, though, is because I can see that over the next 5 to 10 years, these blatant voter suppression attempts, these voter ID laws, these attempts by the Republicans to suppress votes to be able to stay in power, it's going to fail. They're going to lose.
We hope.
And it would take a dramatic effect. It would take a dramatic sea change, social sea. It would take Fox News on double steroids to change the perspective of where this country is going.
I agree, but you have
because you have Trump with playing the fool so greatly,
I think,
that people are realizing that. Now, I agree with you. He's done some damage. He's got Kavanaugh in there, and he's got the Supreme Court in there.
He's got very young lawyers being placed.
Right.
One was a 47-year-old woman today who just a terrible person. And I think she's practiced law 7 years and only had brought three to trial, 3 cases to trial. But she's a dyed-in-the-wool Republican.
Right.
And you know, these people are just crazy.
And these are lifetime appointments.
Yes, they are.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was having a discussion with somebody earlier today, in fact, on Facebook, and I was saying it was Merkley decided not to run for president, and I said, well, that's awesome because, frankly, I think he's a great senator, and he has a lot more leverage outside the constraints of the White House. And this woman chimed in saying, what do you mean constraints? Trump can do pretty much anything he wants. And I said, if that was true, we'd be a lot worse off than we are.
Right.
Thanks to our founding fathers, our foundation is still strong. There has been substantial damage, but we are not yet a third world nation, though it feels like it sometimes.
We may very well win the Senate next time, too. I think we have 48, including independents and so on. So I think we have 48 senators. And so it only takes a couple more, and this time the Republicans have to defend a lot more of their seats. This last time the Democrats had to defend a lot, And so this next time the senators are you know, hopefully will be Republican.
It's more, exactly. It's more of a Democratic advantage to the re-election on the Senate. And that leads to back to where I was coming from. I think that this sea change, this fundamental philosophical, political sea change is occurring over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's going to take audacious proposals like what this Green New Deal is about and what AOC is doing to really drive us forward.
Motivate.
And motivate us to get it done. You know, one thing I really liked about AOC that I read the other day, and I got to share this with you, she is so new to the process. She brings a new set of eyes and a perspective to it that is not jaded, that is not used to the inequities of our government. So the other day she was walking to a hearing and she saw these, what she thought were homeless people waiting in the hallways.
They were homeless, by the way.
They were homeless. And she didn't realize, she had to be told that what they were people that had been hired by lobbyists and big interests to wait in line for them at these hearings. So if they're in line early, they hire these homeless people to stand in line so that they get primo seating at these hearings. And she had no idea.
That's new. Yeah, I'd never heard of that.
Right. And so, okay, you can find they're paying the homeless to do this, but just the fact that they are paying the homeless to be able to reserve their primo seat at a hearing that's affected, that were laws that are being passed that will affect these folks.
All of us.
All of us. It just smacks of favoritism. And she was able to call it out.
She's also paying her, I guess, office staff $52,000 a year and something, and a living wage in Washington D.C. And Fox News says, "How dare she do that?" You know, how dare she? And it's like, hey, she's doing wonderful things. She seems to be a very sweet and lovely person. And you know, I would never try Twitter wars with her, but nor would I have cause to do so. But I mean, if anyone's going to call her an idiot, they should have their head handed to them on a plate.
And 52 grand in Washington D.C. is barely a living wage.
That's right.
Right.
Washington D.C. is one of the highest places to live. But if you're, think how many interns there are out there that aren't making 30 grand, 50 grand. I mean,
I think it's great that she's doing that. Hey,
that's good.
What do you want us, now we're going to come to a close, what should we be looking for politically in the next month or two? You guys have your eye on conventions or people to watch? I'm going to watch AOC.
Let's see.
I'm going to watch the House going through Trump.
Sure, you go first.
Yeah, I'm watching what's happening with the Trump investigation.
Well, you're smiling. A cat with a mouse.
And I actually contributed to Kamala Harris's campaign.
Good.
So I'm not really sure that she's going to make it. Quite frankly, Bernie, Camilla, Joe Biden, whomever,
Warren.
you know, as long as, Warren, actually, you know, I don't want her to win.
Why?
I love her as a senator.
Oh, no, I want her to win.
I think she's fabulous. I think she's amazing.
Yeah, well.
And she's got some guts on her, too.
She sure does. She sure does.
So, I mean, if she's the nominee, I'll vote for her. But, yeah.
Guess so.
You know,
I'm not voting for a Republican, so.
Good. Well,
how about you?
The Oregon State Legislature is still in session. There's a lot of things that are exciting that are going on down there. Campaign finance reform next week is holding its first joint committee with both the House and the Senate. The governor, Kate Brown, is going to be coming to testify. Our campaign finance reform folks are going to be down there in force. I'll be testifying as well. We're going to get campaign finance reform passed in this state, come heck or high water, I predict within the next 2 years.
What are the limits going to be on campaign?
I'm hoping they'll be what they are here in Multnomah County and in the city of Portland at $500.
Oh, that's great. No dark money?
Were you part of rent control passing?
No. That one was not my baby, but that was another big one. We're the first state in the country to have it.
Thank you.
Huge.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's huge.
We have needed that.
And talk about audacious. They did it statewide, too.
Yes.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
pretty neat.
most of us wanted Portland.
Right.
Oh, that's great. And actually, next month, Sherry's going to be back to talk about housing.
Oh, yeah,
Talk
the
about housing, too?
homelessness.
Good.
Our homelessness
Yes.
situation, yeah.
Incredibly important. Well, thank you so much for listening and watching us on Progressive Radio and TV. Green New Deal is good for America, March 5 to 2019. And AOC, good for you, good for me. Thank you, Moses. Absolutely.
Brothers and sisters,